Hello, I'm Irina Baker. Welcome to the podcast I Am a Woman of Power, inspiring stories and practical tips on overcoming challenges by going within and connecting with your divine power. In addition, every interview has a complimentary companion podcast practice at radiantmastery.com/practice. I'm here with Clarissa Kristjansson. She is an internationally recognized menopause transition expert who helps women using holistic mind-body approach to address not only the physical but the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of this life transition. Clarissa is a heart-centered, compassionate, and courageous entrepreneur who thrives on seeing her clients making lasting transformation. Hi, Clarissa.
Hi, Irina. Lovely to see you.
Very lovely to see you from far away. You live in Sweden, I live in America, and here we are meeting across the ocean and just going to have a very lovely conversation. Thank you so much for being here, Clarissa.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted.
Very good. And I am sure you do have a very interesting story for our viewers and listeners to share. So what was your challenge? Let's start with that.
Well, my challenge was that I burnt out, and I had a burnout right in the middle of my menopause. And I was not really aware, firstly, what menopause was, and I ignored the signs and signals that I was about to burn out. And I went so far.
When did they start? When did those signs start? Because we never know what age it will come. It doesn't announce, right? It doesn't tell us, send us a telegram.
It doesn't. No, it does not.
A text message.
No, it doesn't. No. If I'm really honest, I think it started around about when I was 43, 44. I'd been through a very traumatic time in my life. That was a time when my mother had been very ill. She had Alzheimer's and she became unwell, and I had to actually press pause on my corporate job for a while to take care of her. And that's a very difficult time emotionally, because you're suddenly the parent of your parent.
That's right.
They're incapable. She was ending up going to hospital every week because she'd either fallen or her heart wasn't good, and she couldn't speak for herself. So it was a very difficult time there. And then my ex-husband launched a business and went bankrupt at the same time. So I had trauma and I had a young child, and trying to juggle all of these things was an incredible strain on me. And that really was the start and triggered me to become menopausal or perimenopausal.
Of course. They say that when it rains, it pours. Have you heard of that saying before? When it rains, it pours. I wish it did in Arizona all the time, but it does somewhere else. So it wasn't just one trauma. You had two traumas, it seems like, and they're big traumas. So it was really huge, double amount of stress.
Yep, it was a double whammy. And obviously, then my mother did pass away. She had a massive stroke and died within a day. And that is a sense that for yourself that you feel relief.
Absolutely.
And you don't grieve. You don't grieve at that time. The grief doesn't come because you're just so relieved that this person is out of their own pain.
Oh, yes, I can testify. My father died and we felt relieved because he was sick, ill, very, very ill for 5 years. So I definitely know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so then, then I decided with my then husband, we need to change our lives. This isn't working here. Your business isn't working. And I need a break from this. And I got a job in Australia.
Where did you live at that time? I know, but our viewers don't.
I was living just outside of Chester in the northwest of the UK.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
And
I
so
wasn't
you
living in
decided,
Sweden.
so you decided that we're going far, far away, right? And we will start a new life.
Yep, you're right. I thought, well, if we get away from this, we can get some space from everything. And I didn't sort of plan, oh, yes, we're going to Australia. I actually
Mm-hmm,
planned that we would just go away. And I started looking for jobs in everywhere.
mm-hmm.
And then people kept saying to me, why don't you go to Australia? There's lots of jobs there. And I said, oh, well, that sounds okay. I'll go to Australia. I'd never been there until I went
Wow.
for the job interview.
Well, that's why when you said in your introduction, when you sent me your introduction and you put courageous entrepreneur, I really believe that you are very courageous. I was looking at this word.
So yeah, exactly. I mean, it must have been or crazy. I don't know what it was, but it was meant to be, and I think
Mhm.
that's the reality. But I got a job in a company in Sydney, and I took my son, our dog, and my husband said, "Well, I'll come along," and he came along. And 3 weeks later, he said, "This doesn't work for me," and he just went back to the UK. So there I was, Irina, in a foreign country with a small child and a crazy dog, and working in a very different culture as well. I had no friends and no family in Australia. So
Wow.
it was quite tough in the early years.
At least the same language, but still the language, the dialect is different, the pronunciation is different, right?
Everything is different, and
Yeah.
for people who think that, and particularly British people often think that Australia's somehow like a British place. Well, it's not. It's very American.
Hmm.
It's big houses, it's people drive a lot of SUVs on big freeways, um, and it's a very different lifestyle. It's got nothing to do with Europe at all.
Hmm. Interesting to know.
Uh, and people work long hours. We don't have as much holiday, so you think all the things are how much more like the US it is
Mm-hmm.
when you come from Europe, which has very different rules and regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first year, I had 3 jobs because
Wow. All
because it
together
just
or separately?
no separately.
One,
It it just
consequently.
didn't work. The first 2 jobs didn't work out at all.
Mm-hmm.
They just weren't working. And then eventually I got a job where I stayed for 8-9 years, and then I had another job after that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the first year was pretty traumatic, really. But I didn't process it. I just kept pushing on, pushing on, pushing on, because that had been my style prior to that as well. I'd always been a person who just got on with things, met my milestones, pushed on. And now, a few years in, it was like my body was going, my mind was going, you can't do this.
What was your thought process? You already mentioned this. I want to go a little bit deeper. What were you thinking that were you aware of your stress? I mean, obviously on some level you were, but sometimes people don't even know that they're stressed. They just keep
Yeah,
pushing like you said. So
yeah.
were you
I
aware
just
of the stress or you just
no. not in
go?
those early years. I think that I just
Mm-hmm,
pushed on, kept
mm-hmm,
pressing on. It felt like I was just pushing against a wall all the time. That's what
mm-hmm.
it felt like.
So
And
let's tell the viewers and listeners how, so if they live life like that right now, right? If they are pushing and moving forward, they think they're moving forward, right?
yeah,
But actually it's spinning the wheels. They're spinning the wheels
yes,
because they're
yes,
pushing into who knows where
yep.
and still pushing and never stops. So what would you say the signs? What would be the signs for them to look for?
The signs that I would say to look for is you start to be more irritable with people. So
Mm-hmm,
you're not as calm or connected or pleasant towards lots of people.
mm-hmm,
You start to sleep badly. That's often a sign that something isn't quite right. You're waking up at 2 in the morning, you fall back asleep at 5 in the morning, and you're tired all the time. And quite often you're also very negative. You speak in a very negative way. You look for the negativity, not the good. So you're always in that mindset rather than letting in the good and thinking how wonderful things are. There's always a negative edge to everything. It's always yes, but.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And those are the early signs before
Mm-hmm.
your body takes over and starts to really change things.
One of the people I talked to complained about a man. He works a lot, and he complained about he goes to bed, but he cannot leave his job behind. So he keeps thinking and thinking, and it's just like a record is playing constantly. So he cannot sleep. He's thinking about it. Do you think it's also the sign of being burned out?
Oh yeah. I think the burnout comes later, but you're on the journey to burnout.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
Not being able to sleep is an absolute sign of very high stress for people.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. It's
No,
good
no.
information to know about, right?
Yeah.
And let's make a conclusion about, so you've taken all traditional steps you could to remedy your situation. You left your country,
Yep.
you moved far, far away, like Shrek. Shrek said, I was there yet, far, far away.
Yeah, so like Shrek, yeah.
with Fiona, with Fiona. And then you got the new job, you got basically new family dynamics because the husband left,
Yeah.
and you changed the jobs. So these are the steps that you thought would help you, right? You
Oh
thought
yes,
they would help.
yep. Absolutely, Irina. I thought that taking these steps were going to give me a new life. Everything was going to be perfect. I was going to forget all the old stuff, let go of none of that would matter, and I would have this amazing new life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When I was 25, when I moved to America, that's what I thought. I thought I would leave all my problems behind, and because I'm going to the new life, I will have absolutely new life, and it all will be great.
Exactly, and of course it isn't. It really, you just
Right.
create a new set of problems
Right. You
that
bring
replace
your
the old
own,
one.
you bring your own. I remember I
Yeah.
brought a big bag with me, as much as I could, right? As much as I was allowed to bring from another place through customs office and on the plane. And that big bag, well, actually I had two of them and they were huge. And so later on, when I got on the spiritual path and I understood what it was, I looked back and I said, oh my goodness, those two huge bags were full of my issues I brought from Russia. They
Yeah.
were not full of physical stuff.
No,
They were full
no.
of issues, internal issues
Yeah.
that I brought to create the new life with the old issues.
Yes. I did exactly the same. Yeah. Exactly the same. I ended up with the same issues that I had. They actually followed me around.
I am so glad we're talking about it, because don't listen to me, listen to Clarissa. She's testifying to the same thing.
Yep.
A long
Yeah.
time ago, I worked with a client who moved from one country to another, from Latin American country to America several times, not just once, not just twice. By the time I met her, she made the move several times, not just visiting, but moving. Every time she would get a job, she would settle, she would be living, and then something would take you from inside, move her back to that place, and then back and forth she
Wow.
would go. So that's a severe case of internal stuff that pushes you forward, and you're trying to find solution by outer actions, right? By
Yeah. You're
additional
trying to
steps I
find a
told them.
solution by saying, this isn't working for me, so I'll move.
Right.
That's not always the case. I mean, you can move countries if you want to for a good reason and a good
Right.
purpose, and you
Right.
might decide that's the right thing to do, but it doesn't always solve it.
Right.
Just to leave without resolving your issues, or you don't resolve your issues.
Exactly.
And in the end, of course, I had to resolve them.
Let's talk about that. So what exactly, first of all, what was the moment? Because you said your health started failing, right?
It did.
You got
So
to that point.
Oh, yes. So I actually had two incidences that made me decide that I had to take different action. Where I lived in Bondi Beach in Sydney, that my apartment block was on a very steep hill. And I mean, it's a steep hill. I mean, even now, it takes time to get up it. But I actually almost couldn't walk up it because my stress levels were so high that my blood pressure was sky high as well. And I was struggling to breathe to come up this hill back to my house. And my son's going, what's up, Mom? You're not coping here very well. And there had been signs of that earlier, but I'd ignored them. I remember going for a walk with some guy and he said to me, you're having difficulty breathing on this walk. And I was like, no. But of course I was. So it was telling me that, and that something wasn't right. And shortness of breath, if people don't know, is a sign of high blood pressure. So
Good
that
to
was
know.
the first incident. And I kind of was like, oh yeah. But then when I changed jobs, and I had enough of the job I'd had for 9 years, and I took a new job, and it was very tough, a very tough environment. And
I want to stop there for a moment because you're making such brilliant points. You left the previous job and you moved, so to speak, you moved to another job. And in your mind, when people change jobs, of course they don't say, well, I'm going to leave this job because I'm going to the worst job, right? They don't say that.
No, they don't, Irina. No, they don't. And I can tell you that people kept telling me not to go to this job. That was the hilarious thing. And they're saying to me, you don't want to work at, I won't say the company name on the show.
Right.
They kept saying to me, you don't want to work there. It's a terrible place to work. You really don't want to work there. And I'm like, oh. And then I went for the interview and I thought, they're not that bad. And I was offered another job and it was really nice people and I wanted to work there and they wouldn't do the money. And in the end, I took this job against everybody's recommendation, including the recruiter.
Oh, wow.
Because I was just so hell-bent that I was going to change jobs. And,
because we need to pause there for everybody. Because you believed it'll solve your problems, right?
Oh, I did. I thought this will solve my problems. This is my issue. It'll solve all my problems because if I move job, everything will be fine. It will be just fine and everything will be resolved.
And others just don't know what they're saying. I shouldn't listen, which usually we shouldn't listen, right? We should listen to divine.
No, we should listen to the divine, but I wasn't listening to that either. And I wasn't listening to the small voice that was inside me. I was just acting, doing. Yeah. So,
and it's usually highly praised. Acting and doing is usually highly praised.
Well, yes, in this world, that is what is always highly praised, is acting and doing. But it wasn't the right thing to do. It really wasn't. And what happened there was that I was in the first 3 months of the probation time, and I actually blacked out in the office in a meeting room, and everybody else had gone, and I completely lost vision. It was one of the most frightening experiences of my life, that I actually couldn't see anything. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? I can't see anything.
That's traumatic in itself.
Yeah, it was very, very traumatic not to be able to see anything. So there I had collapsed in the office, lost vision, and really frightening. I mean, having to sit in this room and wait for that to pass. Just wait for that to be over. And I was like, I don't believe this. And that's when I had to take action, really, because I knew something was fundamentally really, really wrong.
Well, before you had to take action, because that's what we've been talking about, action all the way, always action.
Yeah.
So I have to point here something.
There's a difference between doing something and actually looking at what I need to change.
Exactly. That's you had the moment of saying to yourself, and please tell me how it was. But the moment that when you said, okay, what is it that is going on inside, right?
Yeah, I really had a moment where I had to say, what is going on here? This is not sustainable. This is going to destroy me as a person. I'm just exhausted. I can't go on anymore like this. And I was frightened, and I had to really take stock and decide what I was going to do with my life as well, because it felt like it was a life point. How am I going to keep going?
So you were at the fork at the road, as they say, at the crossroads. What is the choice you're going to make? So this time you made the correct choice, because instead of acting and doing and moving around and doing everything else, you stopped and you looked inside, because you cannot do both. You cannot act and look inside. You have to slow down.
And that was interesting, that at that point, the first instinct was not to pack my bags and leave Australia and go somewhere else. It was to stay and work things out.
Really? That was in England, right? That before
no,
you
that was
remember
that before, when it was England, I wanted to just go. I wanted to go out, go away. When I was in Australia, I was like, no, I don't want to leave Australia. That's not what I want to do. What I want to do is to stay here in Sydney and work this through.
So I would say, even in England, long time before you, I'm sure you had that guidance, but you didn't, either you didn't hear it or you ignored it. Did you hear the guidance to stay and work on yourself, or you were completely oblivious about it?
I was oblivious to that in those days, and that was almost, 8 years, maybe closer to 10 years after this time. No. In the UK, I just wanted to go. I wanted out of it. I wanted everything to end. In Australia, I was like, I love this place. I've got a lovely home here. I've got nice friends. My son is happy. Why would I want to leave here? I just got to find a different way to work through this.
That was perfect. That was perfect. And then what happened?
And then what happened was that I met somebody just by complete coincidence. It had nothing to do with my personal development as such.
Okay, let's correct here. Not coincidence, but serendipity. How about that word? Serendipity, right?
That's a good word, Irina. Shall we say serendipitously, this woman turned up in my life. And she probably doesn't even know, because she's not a friend of mine, so she doesn't know the impact that she had on me. She doesn't actually know that. But she came to give a workshop about social media, so had nothing to do with personal development like that. And I was very inspired by her, very much about her energy, how fabulous she was. And I happened to Google her, like you do. And it said that she worked with an organization called Open Ground. And I was like, oh, I wonder what that is. And it turned out to be a mindfulness training organization. And they had their headquarters in the next suburb to where I lived.
Wow. By the way, to get practical tips and awareness shifting activities pertaining to this interview, go to radiantmastery.com/practice to access your complimentary companion podcast practice.
I enrolled on a course, and that was the start of turning the corner.
Wow.
Very unexpected, yeah.
So when you look back, we could look at it as this way. You made a decision, and when you made a decision to change in a different way than before, instead of moving, going within, as soon as you made that decision, the divine guidance or divine presence moved forward and introduced this woman. Because before that, you didn't meet that woman. The woman didn't come to give a workshop before. You had to make that internal decision.
Exactly. Exactly. It had to be, as you say, serendipity. It was the right moment for Heather to come into my life.
And it
And
had to come from you. It had to be from your decision to change. And once
yes,
you decided to change, then circumstances came into your life. The serendipity happened.
exactly.
Right.
And everything happened, everything changed. And suddenly there was a whole new path in front of me.
And what did you do? Obviously, we can't describe whole path because it is a path. It takes time and
Many years.
efforts and working inside.
Yeah.
But what were the major steps that you had to take, or what? Because what could our viewers, what could people who do have this and in the same situation, what can they benefit from?
I think the first thing I did was to really stop. Stop chasing around, stop all the worrying, stop all that negative thought. And I mean, that wasn't an easy thing to say. It's easy to say it, but it was
Not
really
at
about,
all, right? Not at all.
it was easy to say. It's about creating space in my life. Instead of filling it up with all the things I was doing and all the rushing around, I had to kind of like create space for myself. And I did that by making time for my yoga, making time for my meditation, going to connect with people who thought the same way that I did. And so there was a lot of just doing that. And then I also did a lot of letting go of being negative about things I didn't like. I mean, I still had to go to work, Irina. I had to go to work. I still had to go to that job. There wasn't another job at that level of seniority just there. I had to pay my house loan, my mortgage. I had my son to bring up.
Right.
But I had to let go of the way that working there made me feel.
That's a brilliant point right there. Feel.
Yeah.
So how did it, what did you have to change? You knew I would ask that.
What did I have to change? Well, I think the first thing I had
About
to just
feeling. About feeling.
What did I do about feeling? Well, I think the first thing was to realize that nothing is ever good or bad, that it's not like this job is terrible and everything is horrible. I mean, I started to think about, well, this job pays really good money. It's very easy to commute. I can work flexible hours. And I'm going to say this sounds terrible, but compared to working in a really big corporation, the work wasn't that hard.
Why does it sound terrible? It sounds great.
People think you're just like hanging out, maybe, but and I mean, but you know
No.
what I mean when you say the job, the quality of the job, what was required to do the job and do it quite well, just wasn't the same as being in a really big multinational. It just wasn't the same. So I
Maybe it
didn't
was an
have to.
easier pace. Maybe it was easier pace. You could describe the more relaxed atmosphere.
No, I would say that what was required in terms of the quality of the work wasn't as big, So I could get by doing my job and using my experience, and I didn't have to keep stressing and trying to impress in the same way. I just did what was necessary. So I took a lot of pressure off myself. That doesn't mean that I did a bad job or was lazy or anything, but I took pressure off myself. And so I was creating space. I was thinking to myself, well, no one cares if I get in here at 8:30 and I leave at 5. I'm just going to do that now. So I didn't make the extra steps because I'd made my mind up that eventually this wasn't my path. I wasn't going to stay here, but I was also going to be pragmatic enough to know that I wasn't going to do what I'd done before, run off to some other country, throw everything up again. I was just going to work this through. My son had a few more years left of school and I needed to keep working. So yeah, make it work,
I have an interesting question, I think. when you described the previous experience at your work and you were almost apologizing that you had to slow down, and you said it could sound terrible, but I didn't need to work as much, and it sounded even, oh my gosh, what am I saying? People will think I'm lazy, right? But it's actually, there are two different ways of approaching the work. One is the driven way, I would call it, right? The driven
Yeah.
way, when you will completely throw yourself at the job and you're completely
Yeah.
stressed about it. And that's what you've done. And it seems like a lot of people believe that that's the only way to have it done. But
Yeah.
then if you relax and calm down and being in the flow and use your qualifications,
Yeah.
Clarissa, you have tremendous qualifications. You're
I know.
PhD, for God's sake, and
I know.
you
I
have
know.
qualities and education and
Yeah.
everything. I admire you for. And but you saying, well, I can't even say it out loud because what people will think, right? So this is for our viewers
Oh, I feel, yeah.
to
Yeah.
see that maybe we
Yeah.
need to change that even definition. When
Yeah.
you
That's
have your
very true.
qualifications, your experience, and you're relaxed about it, you will last longer and you'll be
Yes,
more
you will.
productive. You
Oh,
will be more
yeah, yeah,
productive.
yeah, 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 absolutely. I totally agree with that, Irina. I mean, I'll be much more productive. And I managed to do some really good work there. So, and I got paid well. So, in the end of the day, I was
Mhm.
able to work on myself, but not allow everything else in my life to go crashing around. I had other people who depended on me.
And you were much more pleasant in the environment, I'm sure, because you were not stressed and you were not dying inside.
No, exactly. And I didn't actually care whether they liked me or not. That sense of trying to please people had gone. Oh, I need to be like this and I need to be like that.
Mhm.
And also being a migrant and waiting
Mhm.
to become a citizen, which is what
Mhm.
happened in the job that I left, is very stressful as well. But once you are
Mhm.
a citizen and you're not thinking I've got to work hard and be like this, I live here. This is my country too. There's a shift in your own mindset as well.
Right, right. To hear more inspiring stories and practical tips on overcoming your challenges by going within and connecting with your divine power, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Right. Very good. So what else were you doing at that time? Maybe a couple of more points on what else needs to be done internally.
Internally, I think you just need to spend time reflecting as well. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of need to reflect. Where are you? What's going on with yourself? And internally, I was also learning to listen to my body instead of, not being able to breathe coming up the hill, not being blacking out. I
Mm-hmm.
was much more in tune with my own physical being. um, the small signals that the body sends out all the time about what is going on for you.
I feel like we can summarize your whole experience in one word. I am
I love
today,
that in
I
one
feel
word.
very adventurous.
Oh my
Or
goodness.
maybe in two words, if grammatically correct. Slow down. It's called slow down, right? Because you want to go, 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 and moving, moving,
Yeah,
moving, spinning the
yeah,
wheels and running, running, running into nowhere. And then everything comes down to slow down.
it does. It comes down to slow down. It comes to slow down and tune in.
Very good. Oh, look, this is perfect.
Yeah,
This is
slow
so
down,
perfect.
tune in.
Slow down and tune in. Oh, I love that. I love
Yeah,
that. That, yep,
yeah, yeah. That is
very good.
that is what is very, very important for you to do.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
love it. Mhm. In the process, have you found your power?
Oh, yes. Yes.
What's the definition of power for you?
For me, it's calm, compassion, and courage. That's my power. That I think we can be we can have and be centered and calm. For me, is to be centered, to be in the here and now, not everywhere in my head, to have compassion for myself before I have compassion for others, so that I'm the way in which I run my life, the way in which I speak to myself, the actions I take, are they compassionate? Are they going to support me? So it's about using less of this brain and more of your heart and your gut in the way that you make decisions, in the way that you act each and every day out in the world.
That's right. So can you say I'm a woman of power?
I think so now. I think I'm allowed to say that.
And who gave you that permission?
I did.
Good. Very good. So say it.
I am a woman of power.
Very cool.
I just said that. Yeah, it's true.
It's interesting, Clarissa. I would ask you this question. I think it would be interesting to compare. As I understand, you were a pretty high executive, right? You had high position, high powered position.
Oh, I did.
Okay. So when you had that high powered position, and if you would give me this interview and I would ask you, are you a woman of power? Of course, you would say, I am a woman of power with that voice, right? But
yeah, I would, but it would have been connected to the position, not to me as a person.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, so there's a big difference where I stand today. I'm here because
Yes.
I'm me, myself. I'm not a woman of power because I have a title or because I have a PhD.
And that's power. I do believe that power can be taken away very quickly. If you're not an executive anymore, or your money disappeared, something happened, then you become powerless. Because that power is outwardly. It comes and goes. It can come,
Yes.
it can come
Oh,
go. It's
yeah.
worldly power, it's temporal power. So it is a false power. Do you agree that it is a false power?
I agree, because people immediately then treat you differently.
Exactly.
When you leave your corporate job, people don't, and people do that quite quickly because they're attracted to being with you because of the position that you have, and they're not really your friend. They're there because they think your position will be favorable to them. When you have your own personal power, you're attracting to you and you're connecting with people who feel the same as you do, who are equally as powerful as you are. But because you're not in competition and you're not trying to use the other person, you're trying actually to find ways to collaborate and work for the greater good.
This is so perfect. And you will not lose that power no matter what happens. No matter what happens, you are a powerful woman. I am a woman of power, and this is it.
This is it. This is who I am. This is exactly what it is. Yeah.
And that's a problem of many high-powered people, because when they meet somebody and they want to be friends, they don't even know if that person wants to be a friend because of them or because of their position, right?
Correct.
It's quite a problem for many people.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And I think that's true for a lot of leaders. You don't know who's your friend, or who wants you to give them a favor, who wants you to give them a contract. Someone works with me, there's not, now who's connecting with me, where it's not like that. I mean, for some people it might be, but it's not like that.
Right. And look how your smile is so big and you're so happy, right? So can you summarize just how you feel now after all you've done, after all you've gone through, the experiences from having come from big traumas and huge changes and acting and doing, and where you are now?
I'm at peace with myself. I think I've stopped pushing, chasing. I don't feel that I need to run away from a place I'm in. If I and when I do move from Sweden, because we will for other reasons, they're for the reasons because I chose to do them, not because I was trying to escape something that wasn't working for me. That I am doing what I love, and really that's the most important thing to me now. I'm not doing it because somebody else needs me to do this or that or that. I'm doing what I like. I'm doing what I love. And the future was the future. It will unfold and it'll all be okay, and you can stop worrying about a lot of things.
How's your breath now? How is your breathing?
It's fine. I haven't got, actually, I have no more blood pressure issues. They're long gone now. They're long
That's
gone.
what I wanted to hear.
And I sleep really, really well. Sometimes my husband is very noisy.
By the way, talking about husbands, just for the record, when we change husbands just to change husbands or partners or men in our lives, how does that work? If we just change for a change, right? So we can run away and find a new person.
Oh, it's easy to meet someone, but it's not easy to meet the right person.
And why is that? Do you know why is that it's not easy to meet the right person?
Because your energy is not right, because you haven't worked on yourself. So you attract the same person that you had before.
Exactly. So I would say you always attract the right person. The right person for you, matching your wrong energy.
Yeah, exactly. So you get the same men over and over again. But I actually was single for 5 years. And I felt that I didn't need a relationship like that in my life because I actually wasn't finished working on myself.
Right.
And so I needed to work with me, with my own energy, to make myself feel more, in control of whatever is going on inside me, rather than reaching for a person to save me. I don't need someone to save me. And I think that's what I was doing before, looking for someone to save me.
And instead of saving you, you actually got the person betraying you because that person left.
Yes, that person left. Yeah.
So do you believe that these 5 years of healing inside changed the quality of your relationship?
Oh my goodness, yes. My relationship with my now partner is very different.
Right.
We are much more equal with each other. It's a more open kind of relationship. There's a bit of sometimes each standing in their own power, but it's different. It's different. It's not the same kind of relationship at all. And it's hard to describe sometimes because they're obviously very different people with different experiences and their own journeys. But it's a relationship that I have chosen to be in a different way.
For different reasons.
Yes.
And it's working. That's the main thing.
It's working. It is.
Right. Wow, we covered amazing amount of information, and it was such a pleasure and brilliant points that our viewers and listeners can take and run with it and do something with it. Not just watch the interview and forget about it. You need to take action, but not the outside action, the internal action.
The internal action. The outside action doesn't really work. The outside action spins you around all over the place, and you're still in the same place. Whether it wouldn't have made any difference if I'd stayed in Chester or moved to except Australia was a great experience. But no, that actually moving and swapping husbands and swapping jobs isn't the solution, because it's all outside you, and you can't fix your insides by messing around with your outsides.
You could not make a better conclusion.
No.
Slow down and tune in.
Yes. What's going on in here? Slow down and tune in.
Thank you so much, Clarissa. It was enlightening and very enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina.
I am a woman of power, helping women to awaken to and connect with their inner divine power. Until we meet again, goodbye. To hear more inspiring stories and practical tips on overcoming your challenges, by going within and connecting with your divine power, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Remember to get practical tips and awareness shifting activities pertaining to this interview. Go to radiantmastery.com/practice to access your complimentary companion podcast practice.